Hi everyone, it's Rena, and today I have part 2 of the large explosion box for you. So we will finish our explosion box by adding our mini album, and then I've also included all of the designer paper sizes for you as well, so that you'll have quick access to that, so you'll be able to decorate and get to embellishing quickly also. There is a lot of paper cutting in this video, so you may want to cut out all of your pieces ahead of time and then start assembling everything. I really hope that you'll give this project a try. I know that some of you have been waiting so patiently for this piece, and I can't wait to see all of your awesome projects. I am using some vintage music sheets in this video to decorate my box, and I will have the 12 by 12 digital paper available in my Etsy shop if you're interested in getting a vintage music sheet. If you want a physical pack of vintage music sheets, I will have that in my Etsy shop as well. If you're not in my VIP group, I'd love for you to join. I definitely want to see all the fantastic large explosion boxes that all of you complete, and I'll leave a link below for that as well. Okay, let's get to the project. Okay, so today we are making the mini album for our large explosion box, and I have not covered or done anything with my explosion box since the last time. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to mat the inside, just so that you have everything covered at least with the mat before we start adding pockets and before we add the mini album. So to mat the inside, you're going to cut a piece that measures 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, and then you're going to cut 4 pieces that measure 5 3/4 by 7 3/4. And then this is just going to give you a nice base. You can of course still add your designer paper later. Now if you don't want a mat, so for instance I'm using a white mat, and then I'm going to layer my designer paper. If you just want to add designer paper, that's completely fine also. The piece that we want to make sure we cover is the center piece right here, so that when we add our binding mechanism, that this piece is already covered. So you'll definitely want to figure out what kind of designer paper that you're going to use before you put your mechanism piece down. But I am going to go ahead and mat with white all the way around my explosion box, so that it has that little white layer and then my designer paper layer. So again, that was a 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, and then 4 pieces that measure 5 3/4 by 7 3/4. Okay, and that's what you're going to need to mat. I'm not going to do this part on film. Just make sure that you add your score tape all the way around, peel off your score tape, and then mat it down. I wouldn't use ATG for this because I want to make sure it has a really good stick, so I'm going to use score tape. If you want to use ATG, completely up to you. But this piece, this step I'm not going to do on camera, okay? So the first thing that we're going to do is, there are a ton of pieces to cut out. So for your pockets or your flaps of your mini album, you're going to need 20 pieces. You're going to need 10 that measure 5 by 7, and then you're going to need another 10 that measure 6 by 7, and this is going to create your pocket or your flap for your mini album. This will go stuck into your mini album. You'll have a tag here, and then we're going to add a flap right here. So your flap pieces are going to measure 5 by 4. So these pieces are 5 by 4, and then all we're going to do is score on the 1 inch, and then we're going to attach them like this. And this is going to create your flap, and then you'll have your pocket. So again, these were 5 by 4. You need 10 of these. You need 10 pieces that measure 6 by 7, and then you need 10 pieces that measure 5 by 7. Those are going to be your pocket flaps. For the tags that go inside your pockets, you're going to need 10 pieces that measure 4 and 15/16 by 7. So basically all I did was cut off a tiny little sliver on the side so that it fit perfectly into my pocket. So that's 10 of those. Those are for your tags. If you don't want to put that many tags in, it's completely up to you. You don't have to. If you want to make them 5 by 7 to fit in your pockets, that's completely fine also. It's just going to be a little tougher to get them in and out. So I just cut off a tiny little sliver so that I can make it a little easier. If you want to make them skinnier than that, you can definitely do that also. Then for your binding pieces, you're going to need 5 pieces. So the first one is going to be 1.5 by 5 inches. Then you're going to have one that measures 2 by 5. Then you'll have another one that measures 2.5 by 5. And then lastly, you'll have one that measures 3 by 5, and then one that's 3.5 by 5. And that's going to be for our binding. And then if you want to add any photo tags, we are going to make 2 pockets on your explosion album. And those pockets, you're going to need 2 pieces that measure 7 by 5, and those are going to be for the outside of the explosion box. So if you want to add photo tags to those pockets, then you'll need some photo tags that measure 4.25 by 6.25, which will still give you a nice little border for your 4 by 6 photos. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by scoring. We're going to work on our pockets first, or our I guess I'm going to call them pockets for our mini album so they don't get you don't get confused. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work with our 5 by 7, our 10 pieces that are 5 by 7, and our 10 pieces that are 6 by 7. So you're going to take each of your pieces that measure 6 by 7, and you're going to score them on the 6-inch side. You're going to score them at 5.5, and you're going to score them at 1/2 inch. So take all 10 of your pieces that measure 6 by 7 and score them at 1/2 inch and 5.5. And then once you've done that, you're going to fold on your score lines and burnish. And then what we're going to do is we're going to attach this piece to our 5 by 7. So you're going to take your 6 by 7 piece, which you've already added score lines to, you've burnished, and now you're going to add score tape. And then make sure you burnish your score tape. And then you're going to take one of your 5 by 7 pieces, you're going to peel off your score tape, and you're going to attach your 5 by 7 piece right on top. And that's going to create this little pocket right here. Okay, so again, all I did was I took one of my 6 by 7 pieces and I scored on the 6-inch side at 1/2 inch and 5.5 inches. Then I folded on my score lines and I added my score tape. And then you're going to peel off your score tape and you're going to add one of your 5 by 7 pieces on top. And this is going to create 2 openings here. You're going to have one opening up here. This is where you're going to be able to put your tag in and out. And then this opening on the bottom is where we're going to adhere it to the binding so that it'll fit into your mini album. So go ahead and score all of your pieces that measure 6 by 7, score them at 1/2 inch and 5.5 inches, and then add score tape, and then add the 5 by 7 piece on top to create your pockets. So you'll have 10 of those when you're finished. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll move on to the flaps. Okay, so I finished scoring all of my 6 by 7 inch pieces. I added my score tape, and now just wanted to come back and make sure that no one was confused. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our 5 by 7 pieces and we're going to adhere them right here on the top. So just take the score tape backing off, and you can adhere these however is easiest for you. For me, it's just a little easier to do one side first, to line up one side first, and then to adhere the second side. But if it's easier for you just to stick it down like this, or however it is easiest for you, you go ahead and do it. And so then you'll end up with your two sides. Okay, so go ahead and finish the rest of these. These are the 6x7 pieces, and adhere the 5x7. Now make sure you're adhering the 5x7 pieces and not the pieces that we cut for your photo tags that are going to go in your pocket, which were 4 and 15/16 by 7. They're going to be a little tiny bit smaller, so make sure that you're using your 5x7 pieces. If you cut everything out at the very beginning and you have all your pieces laid out, you want to make sure you're using the right side. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish adhering our pockets. Okay, so now I have my 10 pockets for my mini album, and if you want to make more than 10, you can definitely make more than 10. I'm going to give you 2 other dimensions, so if you want to make 12, if you want to have 12 tags in your mini album, and then I'll give you another dimension for an additional piece for your binding if you want to make 14. 10 works well for me, at least when I first made my mini album. 10 worked well for me because my mom has 9 grandkids. But if you want to make 14 or 16, you definitely could. And these are the pieces that are going to go right here in the center. So this will be your mini album right here in the center. So if you want to do 12 or 14, you definitely can. And I will give you those dimensions also at the very end. So if you want to, or when we're doing our binding. So if you want to create 2 more of these to make 12, or 4 more to make 14, you definitely can do that. So these are going to be our actual album pages. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do our flaps. Now, if you want to wait to do your flaps until after you've secured these to your binding, you can completely do that. I just like doing my flaps ahead of time because it's just a little easier for me, but you do whatever works best for you. So for your flaps, these are your pieces that measure 4 by 5. And what we're going to do on the 4-inch side is we're going to score it at 1 inch. So let me get my scoring board. And you'll have 10 of these pieces that you'll need to score. So on the 4-inch side, you're going to score it at, you can either do 1 inch, or you can do, what I like to do is 3 inches. This side just seems a little easier for me to score. Now, your flap, once you score, then you'll fold it over and burnish, and then you're going to add score tape right here, and you're going to attach your flap right here onto your pocket. Don't attach your flap over. You don't want to cover your opening. You want to attach it on one side of your pocket so that your flap is attached and your pocket is you're still able to open this piece right here. Now, if you want to make your flap full page, you could totally make your flap full page. So this is 7 inches long. So you would want to make this piece, instead of 5 by 4, you'd want to make it 5 by 8 inches. Then you would score at 7 inches, fold this over, and then you'd have a 7-inch long flap. You may want to slice off a tiny bit at the bottom if you do decide to go all the way down. That way you have a little bit there and you don't have to worry about it rubbing against the bottom. In this case, I made mine 4 inches only because I used scraps from all of the pieces I had already cut, and so 5 by 4 seemed to work well for me. So go ahead and take all of your pieces that measure 5 by 4, and then on the 4-inch side score at 3 inches, and then burnish them and add your score tape here to the back, and then we'll adhere them to your album pages. Okay, so now I have added, I've scored all of my 5 by 4 inch pieces at the 3-inch mark. I added my score tape on the back and I burnished. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take your flap and you're going to attach it to either side of your album pocket. Make sure again that you do not cover this pocket, because this is where a tag is going to go. So once you add your flap, that side is going to be where your tag goes, and the bottom is going to be where we connect it to our binding. If you want to add a decorative border with a border punch, right now you definitely want to do that before you attach your flaps. It's easier for me to do it that way. If it's easier for you to attach your flaps and then add a border punch, you can do it that way. Just do whatever is easiest for you. I did want to mention that if you, when you added your 5x7 piece to your pocket, if you have a tiny little bit that's not aligned, it's completely fine. If you want to take your scissors and cut off that tiny little piece, you can. Just make sure that you're super careful not to cut into the pocket piece or the piece where we created this pocket, because then you'll have a little hole and it won't close anymore. So if that tiny, like I have one right here, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a tiny little piece that hangs over because I didn't line it up perfectly. If you want to cut that little tiny piece off, that's completely fine. If you don't, that's fine also. It's completely up to you. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take off our tape backing for our flap. And we're going to add this to our pocket page. And again, don't cover your pocket opening. You're going to want to add it right to the front. Okay, so now you have a flap, and then you have a place for your pocket, for your tag to go in. So go ahead and add all your flaps on the remaining 10 pocket pages. And then what we're going to do is work on our binding. Okay, so add the rest of your flaps and then we'll work on our binding. Okay, so now we're going to work on our binding system. And so you're going to need five pieces, and I've already scored mine, but we will score them right now together. So you're going to need one piece that measures 1.5 by 5, one piece that measures 2 by 5, one piece that measures 2.5 by 5, a piece that measures 3 by 5, and then a piece that measures 3.5 by 5. And so this is basically a variation on stack the deck. If you want to do hidden hinge, you can definitely do hidden hinge. If you want to do book binding, which you sew with a tapestry needle, you can definitely do that. Do whatever works best for you. I'm just doing this variation on stack the hinge or stack the deck because it just seems easiest to me. But again, you do whatever works best for you. Now this is gonna give us 10 little tabs so that we can attach our 10 pages. If you want to do 12 pages, then you're going to need an additional piece that is 4 by 5. If you want to do 14 album pages, then you'll need the 4 by 5 piece, and you'll need another piece that measures 4.5 by 5. Okay, and so all you're going to do on your pieces is however many you choose to take or you choose to make. You'll take your piece, so this is my 1.5 by 5 piece, and you're going to measure at 1/2 inch on each side. And I say that so that way if you do 4 by 5 or 4.5 by 5, you won't be confused about where you measure. You're just going to do 1/2 inch on this side, 1/2 inch on this side. So on my 1.5 by 5, I did 1/2 inch and 1 inch. Okay, so I scored at 1/2 inch and 1 inch on my 1.5 by 5. So then on my next piece, which is 2 by 5, I scored at 1/2 inch and 1.5 inch, so half on each side. Then my next piece, which is 2.5 by 5, I scored at 1/2 inch, and then I scored at 2. Again, 1/2 inch on each side. If it's easier for you to score 1/2 inch, rotate it and score 1/2 inch, you can do that also. My next piece is 3 by 5, so I scored at 1/2 inch, and then I scored at 2.5 inches. My next piece is 3.5 by 5, and I scored at 1/2 inch and 3 inches. So if you do a 4 by 5, then you'll score at 1/2 inch and 3.5 inches. And then so on and so on. So however many pages you decide to do. So if you decide you only want to do 8 pages, then you only need 4. If you do the full 14, then you'll need the 7 pieces. Okay? So once you've scored your pieces, you will fold on your score lines and burnish for all of your pieces. Fold and burnish for all of your pieces. And so the way this works is your pieces are just going to fit right inside of each other. Now I gave mine a little bit more space, so they're not all right on top of each other. They're not completely right next to each other. So what that means is that mine are going to have a little bit of space between them. So when I attach these together, you'll see there's a tiny little space right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add cardstock pieces or my designer paper in between my layers, so that way when you see, you'll see the little tiny bit of designer paper here. If you want to do that, you can definitely do it. It's up to you. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do it. I'm just doing what I like to do and what works best for me, but you do whatever you want to do. Now, if you decide you want to add the designer piece, this is 2.5 inches wide. So what I did was I cut my piece a tiny sliver of a little piece less than 2.5. So I want to say that's, 2 and, the little 16th right before 2.5. So that would be 2 and, let me get my paper trimmer. So I cut it at 2 and 7/16. 1, 2, 3. 2 and 7/16. So that way I had a tiny little sliver. And I did that for all of my pieces. So this one I cut, whoops, not that one. This one I cut just a little tiny bit smaller on each of them, just so that I could have that little tiny bit of lining. And this top one, you are going to want to add a little designer paper if you don't add it to the other ones, because this is the one that's going to be visible in your album. So if you want to add designer paper like I did, I will go ahead and add measurements for these so that you have them as well. I don't have them right now listed, but I will go ahead and add them in the comment section so that you have access to them, so that you know what they are, or I'll add another slide so that you know what these designer pieces are. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and stick all of my pieces, my designer pieces, on with my ATG, and then we will come back and put our binding system together. Okay, so I added my designer paper to the inside of my my binding or my hinge, my stack the deck system. And so now what I want you to do is we're going to add score tape on the back of each of these. On each of your little binding pieces, you're going to add score tape, and this is what's going to really anchor this to your explosion album. So make sure that you add enough score tape so that you have a good stick. So you're just going to go ahead and add score tape to the bottom of each one. So add score tape to this one, add score tape here, and make sure you don't go over your score marks. You only want to add it to this center section. So add it to this one, add it to this one, and this one, and then we're going to go ahead and put our binding system together, and then we'll attach it to our explosion box, and then we'll add our pages onto our binding system, and that'll be pretty, we'll add our pockets to our explosion box, and that'll be pretty much it. Okay, so add your score tape, and then we'll go ahead and put our binding together. Okay, so now I've added score tape to the back of all of my hinge pieces, and this piece, the largest piece, is going to be the piece that goes into your explosion box. So we're not going to, or attaches to your explosion box, so we're not going to do anything with that tape backing just yet. So now we're going to go to the piece that measures 3 by 5, and you're going to take off your tape backing and you're going to center it right on top of the piece that measured 3.5 by 5. Now, if you decided to do the 12 or the 14 pages, mini album pages, and you added 2 additional ones or 1 additional one, just make sure that your largest, that's the one that's actually going to go into or stick to your mini album on the bottom. your large explosion album on the bottom. So don't do anything with your largest piece. You're going to want to stack all of your other pieces on top of your largest piece. So just take this piece right here. I've already taken the tape backing off, and you're just going to center it as best as you can and stick it right on top. And then make sure you burnish that down. So now I already have 2 pieces. I already have 4 pages right here. And you'll see, this is why I decided to add my designer paper on the bottom, because you can see it right here on the sides just a tiny bit. So then you're going to do that with your next piece. This is your 2.5 by 5 piece. Just take off the tape backing, and you're going to adhere it right in the center of the piece you just stuck down. Again, if you want to use hidden hinge or you want to do the bookbinding method, you do whatever works best for you when you put your album together. Okay. And we're going to do the next piece. And this piece measures 2 by 5. And you're going to center this one right in the center of that one. Make sure you burnish. Now I'm going to do my last piece. And this is my smallest piece, and this piece measures 1.5 by 5. Okay, so now you have all of your pieces, all of your hinges ready to go, and you can burnish them going both ways, so that way when you add your pages you don't have any trouble. So you have 5 on each side, so you have 5 pages that'll go on this side and 5 pages that will go on this side. And then you have your tape back here. This is what you're going to take off, and you're going to stick onto your large explosion box. But before we do that, I want you to take your hinges and you're going to miter off your corners, and this is just going to make it easier when you add your pages. So for instance, here's your page. This bottom piece is what's going to go onto this hinge right here. If I try to stick it on right here without mitering my corners, I can do it, it's just going to be a little more difficult. So go ahead and, well, you're going to add score tape to both sides. So if you want to add your score tape first and then miter your corners, which is what I'm going to do, you can definitely do that. And so you're going to add score tape to both sides so that it has good stick when you add your pages. So add your score tape to both sides. I'm just going to go through and add my score tape. And I'm adding score tape to both sides of my hinges. Okay, almost done. I have 2 more that I have to do. And then after you add your score tape, of course, make sure that you burnish. Okay, and then I know I didn't add any over here to this side, so I'm just going to come back over here and add score tape over here. Okay, so now I've added score tape to both sides of my hinges, so make sure that you burnish that really well. And now that I've added my score tape, I'm going to miter my edges. If you wanted to miter your edges or miter your corners before, you definitely could. It's up to you. So I'm just going to cut off a tiny little point up to my score line. So I'm just going to cut off my corners just like that. And I'm going to do that for all of my hinges. So just go ahead and miter all of your corners on all of your hinges. And then if you have not gone ahead and added your designer paper or your base paper to your explosion box, now is the time to do it. So what I've done here is I've added a base layer, and this one was 5 3/4 by 5 3/4, and then I added this designer this vintage music sheet, and I cut this at 5 1/2 by 5 1/2, and then I decided that I was going to use this graphic 45 gilded lily paper collection I have. I've kind of been hoarding this, but this is going to be what I use for my top layer. So then I'm going to add this piece right here, and this is 5 1/4 by 5 1/4, and then this piece is going to go right on the top right here in the center. So if you have not decided what designer paper that you want to add for your center, now is the perfect time to do it, because you want to make sure you add your designer paper before you add your hinge on the top. So that way you have the paper on already before you add your hinge. If you decide you don't want to, you definitely could. In my last explosion box, I think I added I didn't have this designer paper on. I added the hinge before, and then all I did was I cut strips of designer paper and I went all the way around. In this case, I found that a little bit more difficult, so this time I learned my lesson. So I added my designer, my music sheet on the bottom, and then I'm going to add my graphic 45 paper, and then I'm going to add this hinge right here on the top. So if you haven't picked your paper, go ahead and pick your paper now, and we're going to miter our corners off our hinges. Then we're going to take off our tape, stick it to the bottom. So make sure that you have both of your pieces already stuck down, because then we're going to stick this to the bottom. Then we're going to add 2 pockets. If you want to add 4 pockets, you definitely can. We're only going to add 2 in this video. And then after that, we're going to add our album pages. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Oh, before I forget, if you have not decorated this back part over here, you definitely want to go ahead and get those papers on before you add your album pages. So you could definitely add your hidden hinge and then go ahead and add your paper if you want. But my recommendation is you do that before you add your album pages, because it'll be so much easier since the surface will still be able to be flat. You can flip it over and it'll still be flat. So go ahead and miter your corners on your hinges, and then we'll go ahead and get everything assembled together. Okay, so I have gone ahead and mitered all my corners, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tape backing off and I'm going to stick this right in the center. What I want you to be careful of is this last hinge. There is tape on this last hinge, so make sure when you're taking off the tape that you don't take off the 2 pieces of tape on the edges. You only want to take off the tape right here on the back, and that's the piece that we're going to stick to the bottom of our explosion box. So you'll see I skipped one piece. This is the piece that's on my hinge. So make sure you don't take that backing off of that one just yet, because what we're going to do is stick down our hinge first, Then we'll go ahead and do our pockets, and then we'll do our pages. Okay, so now I've taken off the backing here, and I'm just going to center this as best as I possibly can in the middle of my explosion box. You definitely can measure this if you want. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. You do whatever works best for you. And then I'm just going to burnish this down. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we have our hinge system in place. So this is ready for you to attach your pages. All you would have to do is take off the tape backing and carefully slide this in, and then your page will attach just like that. But before we do that, we're going to attach the pockets. Now, if you want to add more than 2 pockets, it's completely up to you. I'm only going to add 2 pockets. So my pocket pieces, if you want to add the pockets the way I'm going to add them, then you'll need 2 pieces that measure 7 by 5 inches. And we're going to take our scoring tool and we're going to score on the 7-inch side at 6.5 and 1/2 inch. So that was on the 7-inch side. We scored at 1/2 inch and 6.5. Then you're going to rotate over and you're going to score at 4 inches. I gave the bottom a full inch. If you only want to give it 1/2 inch and make it a little larger, you definitely can. I just decided to give it a full inch at the bottom. So now you're going to add your score tape, just like we would if we were making a pocket for you know, either a card or for any other mini album. We're just going to add our score tape to the lines that we just, inside the little score lines that we just marked. And you're going to burnish, and you're going to miter your corners, and I'm just cutting through that little X line. Even though the bottom is 1 inch and this is just 1/2 inch, all you still have to do is just cut through that little X at the bottom. I'm going to fold over, and there's my pocket. So I already have my other one done. So if you want to do more than 2, you can do as many as you'd like. If you want to do them larger than I did mine, it's completely up to you. So I am going to add my pockets on either side like this. Now I've already added my base layer of cardstock. If you don't want to do a base layer, it's completely up to you. If you want to add designer paper here, you can. It's completely up to you. So now all I'm going to do is take my tape backing off, and I'm going to adhere my pocket. Okay, so my pocket is down. And if you wanted to make a longer pocket that went all the way up to the top, you can definitely do that. That's the great thing about adding pockets and flaps, is you can make them any size that you want to make them, whatever works best for you. And again, if you want to add 4 pockets, if you want to add 1 pocket, if you don't want to add any pockets, completely up to you. So now I'm going to add my pocket to this side over here. And I am just lining it up with, the paper on the bottom with the base paper at the bottom and sticking it on. And this one came out just a tiny bit crooked, but that's okay because I'll be able to cover it up when I add my paper. If yours comes out a little crooked, don't worry about it. If you want to peel it off and then readjust it, if you have one of these spatulas, I would recommend, if you're peeling something off, all you would do is you would stick this under the bottom and kind of wiggle it and see how it comes off like that. Don't try to tear the paper off, because if you try to tear it off, it's going to tear this base paper. But if you just stick your spatula on the bottom and you kind of wiggle it through this way, then you'll be able to take it off. And then you can take the whole pocket off and then add score tape again if you need to, completely up to you. Okay, so now my pockets are added, my hinges are added. So now we're going to add our pages. If you want to decorate your pages before you add them, you can definitely do that. I don't have all of my vintage music sheets cut yet, so I'm not going to decorate mine, but you definitely could decorate them if you wanted to. If you haven't added an edge punch and you still want to do that, make sure you do this before you put your pages in, because it'll be a little bit harder if you wait. So now what we're going to do, and this piece requires sometimes a little bit more patience than everything else, is you're going to stick in your album pages. So if you have a full flip that goes all the way to the bottom, flip your flip up so that way it's out of your way, and you're going to stick your pages in just like this. So what you're going to do is you're going to take off your tape backing on both sides, and you're going to try to be as precise as you possibly can be when you're adding these. So I'm just going to open it up like this, put it over my little hinge, and line it up at the bottom. That's it. So now my page is on. That's it. And if it's a little crooked, if you want to take your spatula and wiggle it out, now's the time to do that too before you do the next one. So now we're going to move on to the next page and do the exact same thing. Okay, so I finished adding all my album pages. I did go ahead and I decorated my panel, my explosion box panels already. All I did was I added this vintage music sheet, and then I added my gilded lily paper. Well, this we did on the bottom, but I added my gilded lily paper. So now my pockets are ready. I have not yet decorated my mini album. I will be doing that next, but your mini album is pretty much done at this point. So you have your flap right here, then you have your pocket. So that's where these pieces, which are slightly smaller than 5, and they're, so what were they, 4 by 15/16 by 7. This just slides in right here, and it's a little bit larger, so that way it'll poke out at the top. If you want to add a hole punch and then put a piece of ribbon, you can definitely do that. But you'll have 10 of these, so you have one for each of your album pages. And then, like I said, if you want to add pockets, you could definitely add a pocket here to the back if you wanted to, a small pocket, a medium-sized pocket, a full pocket, whatever you'd like to do, you can definitely do it on this explosion box. You can add more than one tag in here, whatever you'd like to do. I did not cut any 6 1/4. This one's sticking a little bit. I did not cut any 6 1/4 by 4 1/4. I wonder if I didn't cut this one down. I'll have to check it. 6 1/4 by 4 1/4. But if you want to do 5 by 7s right there, you can also do 5 by 7s in your pocket as well. Completely up to you. The last time I just added like little flags right here, and then I stuck pictures in there. If you decided you wanted to add a side pocket, you could add a side pocket. If you decided you wanted to add, a diagonal pocket, you could do that also. You can really add a ton of different things in here. It's completely up to you. But that's it. That's basic. That's your basic, how you basically put together your large explosion box. I hope that you will give it a try. And if you're in my VIP group, I definitely want to see yours. If you're not in my VIP group and you want to join, of course, I'll include the link below. I'd love to see your large explosion boxes. Thanks so much. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I will respond as soon as I can. Thanks.